we at Vijayabhumi School of Law would like to thank each and every one of you for joining us as a registered participant for our first webinar on paperless and peopleless courts, a new reality of the new decade. I would like to introduce our esteemed speaker of the session, Mr. Hitesh Jain. He's currently the managing partner of Parinam Law Associates. As we are all aware today, the outbreak of this pandemic has presented an opportunity to the legal profession to digitize its entire functioning. It is surely a welcome move to enforce video conferencing as an accepted medium to hear urgent matters and promote e-filing. In today's session, we will discuss the following aspects extensively. First, how will video conferencing and e-filing change the nature of litigation and advocacy in India? Second, can these digital mediums be used as an effective means at the lower courts? Third, how can we revamp our legal curriculum and prepare future lawyers for this revolution? Over to Hitesh, sir.
Thank you, Kritika, for your kind introduction. It's an interesting time, interesting era. We are witnessing the lockdown, but I'm sure every crisis also presents an opportunity, and it also gives us some time to reflect upon as to what are the solutions for such crisis and what is the future beyond the crisis. Yes, there has to be certain learnings from a crisis. And in the event that we are required to face a lockdown in the future for any unfortunate incident, are we going to sit with the folded hands, with the courts being shut, with minimal of technology, or we are going to look at the technology and find some answers as to how we can work from home? Because yes, I mean, last 15 days, Corona, work from home, and social distancing. All these three topics have really dominated our ears. Every conversation right from you wake up till you go to bed, it's about social distancing and work from home. So the issue is that whether it is possible from the work from home, and from there flows the idea of paperless and peopleless court. And in a very simple meaning of paperless and peopleless court is virtual courtroom and a digital record. Now, for a country like India, modernization of the judiciary is likely to help overcome several of the problems. For example, the backlog, the arrears, and the unprecedented delays which we have seen in the disposal of cases. Information, communication, and technology is imperative to enhance the quality of justice, reduce congestions in court, and ensure timely disposal of cases. As far as the digitization is concerned and the computerization of the courts is concerned, this is a process that started long back in 1990. So when we look back at almost 3 decades, now what is the scenario in front of us? That a simple question: has the courts been computerized? The answer is yes. But if the courts are computerized, are the records being digitized? The answer perhaps is in the gray zone. I don't think that we have been able to digitize the record. Now, I want to share 2 interesting anecdotes. And this was when, as a law student, I had an opportunity to visit one of the trial proceedings in a criminal trial in Pune. It was a cross-examination that was being conducted. So a typical cross-examination where a lawyer is asking a question to the witness. The witness is responding in the language he understands or he speaks. The judge transcribing the language and then dictating the translation to the steno so that he can make a record. And one of the funniest thing is that the witness, he gave an answer when a question was asked that what happened when you were riding a scooter. So he says, I fell down from the scooter. In Hindi, he says, my scooter se gir gaya tha. I'll also translate that in English. मुझे भी लग गई, scooter खराब हो गई और scooter को भी कुछ जख्म हुई. And then it's like the judge who was dictating the translation to the steno, he said scooter sustained injuries. So this was the era where multiple translations, and then instead of computers you have the typewriters that were being used, and a simple cross-examination of 10 questions used to take good 3 to 4 hours. As far as the cause list is concerned, I mean, those who are aware about the Bombay any of the high court, when you want to keep a watch on the proceedings in the court, and if you want to understand as to whether your matter is listed on the before the particular court, earlier people used to run helter skelter. There used to be something called board watching clerk, whose job was to just be running down the court's corridor, watch the board, and then call the lawyers and the counsels as to what is the status of the matter in the court. And now you compare and contrast, you see you have the virtual online display board. Coming to the topic again, I mean, whether virtual courts are possible, whether digitization is possible, and what is the progress that can be achieved. According to me, it is the need of the hour, undoubtedly. But to have a successful system, we have to build an ecosystem. Now, who are the stakeholders in this ecosystem? The stakeholders are the lawmakers, law students, law schools, lawyers, and the judiciary. So this is the ecosystem which needs to have a right attitude and mindset if we seriously want to have a paperless and a people-less system. Coming to the law school and the law students, merely teaching law subjects in the law school will not be sufficient. A law school will have to equip and arm the children, law students, with the courses on technology and management along with the legal subject. The important pointers for the law school will be to also explore beyond the legal subject and look at the subjects such as technology and management. And when it comes to technology, I mean, it's all easy to use languages like data mining, artificial intelligence, but how we can use it in a practical sense, how we can ensure that there is a digital literacy. For a law student who's going to pass out from the law school also has to be digitally literate. He should be armed and equipped with tools so that he can use the technology seamlessly, efficiently, so that we can try to ensure that we can have a digitization of the records. So the first stakeholder in this process is going to be the law school and the law students. And there is a thought for the managements of the law school to consider adding subjects of technology and management insofar as the infrastructure is concerned. The second part is going to be the digitization of the record. Now, digitization of the record is the most important aspect, and although the process has started, but we have to complete the process on the war footing. Here, the role of the lawmakers and the judiciary comes, where the lawmakers has to ensure that sufficient funds are available for digitization of the record, and judiciary to look at the proactive solution to ensure that we digitize the record right from the Supreme Court to the lower court. As far as the digitization of records is concerned, according to me, there should not be any exception, for the simple reason, if you are going to argue any appeals, or if you are going to argue a matter right in the Supreme Court, you don't need to submit the record to the Supreme Court. The court should be in a position to pick up all the records from the High Court and the Supreme Court. So this will basically reduce this possibility that you file a paper book at the stage of appeal, either in the High Court or the District Court or even in the Supreme Court. You don't need to file the entire record. Simpliciter grounds of appeal can file, and then the matter can be taken. The use of legal transcription, which is very prevalent who are familiar and those who have witnessed the legal system in the United Kingdom, United States, Singapore, you will see the use of legal transcription that is being increasingly recording of evidence. I also have to look at the technical infrastructure which can be used to support several changes, several apps that we can look at already available, which has feature of basically scanning pleadings, and we can have a personalized cost list also. If the courts are paperless, the next change you will see will be in the lawyers' offices, which will also become paperless. The digitization has to start with the education in the law school, both for the students and also for the legal professionals. So according to me, when India has been a leader insofar as technology is concerned, we have some amazing companies who have been able to provide massive solutions in terms of technology. And I don't see any reason as to why such technology cannot be made available for the legal infrastructure. It requires also participation from all the stakeholders. Again, I'm emphasizing on the participation by the lawyers, law students, and also by the judiciary. This is one area where where we have to basically create awareness, train the people, and adapting to the new technology. For example, something like artificial intelligence and data mining. Now, basically, there are also judges who are like most of the judges in the High Court are above 50, or the Supreme Court, you will see most of the judges. Not every judge is the technology savvy. And similar is the case with most of the lawyers also. I mean, those lawyers who have joined the bar in 70s and 80s, they may not be technology savvy, but they will also have to come to the table, be prepared to use the technology. Because if you start answering in if and buts, and if there is going to be no digital literacy, then we cannot use the technology for the basis of making a digitization of the record. Now, clearly, what are the advantages of paperless and peopleless courtroom? You can prevent overcrowding. I mean, it is environment friendly. Basically, you have a situation of a lockdown, and particularly in a situation of a delay, I think there are tremendous advantages a virtual courtroom can bring to the table. For example, when you file a petition for divorce, which is by mutual consent, usually the lawyers are visiting the court, the parties are required to visit the court. You can ensure that there can be a e-filing, there can be a virtual courtroom, and from the virtual courtroom, from the lawyer's office or wherever the client is situated, by the use of technology, you can participate, and you can ensure that without lawyers attending the court, without parties attending the court, by using the robust digital infrastructure, there are matters which can be decided without a single paper that can be filed, without a physical presence of any particular party. For example, in a suit also, there are various matters which are at the stage of directions, or even as far as to stretch the matters which requires a submission to be made. In my view, and looking at my experience over 24 years and looking at either Supreme Court, High Court, arbitration, according to me, 70 to 80% matters can be easily argued in a virtual courtroom. If we had adapted to a paperless courtroom, virtual courtroom, I'm sure during this lockdown, we would have all been working seamlessly. We would have been conducting the arbitration matters. We would have been conducting matters in the court. And I guess there are certain directions that are coming. Supreme Court is also trying to experiment about the virtual courtroom. Most of the high courts have taken the lead. The Bombay High Court has come with the guidelines. As far as Patna High Court also has taken a lead in providing an ecosystem for the virtual courtroom and e-filing is concerned. So everybody recognizes the importance of digitization of record, importance of e-filing, and importance of virtual courtroom. Clearly, this crisis has presented an opportunity, but in my view, we should not just look at the crisis, but we should look beyond the crisis and try to ensure as to how we can maximize this opportunity.
So I must say we have received a lot of questions already. One of the frequently asked questions that I notice is that how can we train judges to learn new technology? And a follow-up question to that is that the majority of judges, despite e-courts being introduced, prefer not to use technology in place. How do we address this problem?
Whether you are a law student, whether you are a lawyer, or whether you are a judge, you are always in the mode of continuous learning. Legal profession is not static, that once you have passed from the law school, you don't need to study. You have to keep yourself updating. In the similar way, the judges will have to undergo training. They will have to adapt themselves. I know it's a slow process. I mean, most of the judges who have recently been appointed, they are familiar with the technology. One solution is like we must have a ease of technology. The technology should be simple, easy, so that any person can use the technology. That is the first aspect. And second, the judges also have to undergo a training.
The next question that I see that a lot of people have also asked is that what changes must be brought in the legal curriculum to ensure that future lawyers are more adept with the new digital processes? And another question which I can club with this one is that how do we promote digital literacy in traditional law colleges where rote learning is highly prevalent?
Well, just to share one experience, when I passed out from the law school in 95 and when I joined London School of Economics for my master's program, for at least 7 days, we had a workshop on how to use as basic as Microsoft Word, Microsoft Office, what are the tools of technology, how to use the email at that time, which was also very novel during that period, as to how to receive and send the email. I believe that most of the law school, along with the legal subject, must have a rigorous program on technology and management. Artificial intelligence, data mining, all these words cannot just be used as a rhetoric or a candor or as a candor during a conversation, but this should be a part of curriculum. There should be a well-designed course, and it should not limit it to only when you join the law school, but every year, along with the legal subjects, there should be a couple of subjects on technology. Along with the technology, I will also recommend subjects on management, because how to use the technology is a part of management.
So another question that I see a lot of people seem to be asking is, and again, this will have two parts. Firstly, what are the cons of adopting this technology? And second is, what about issues of data breach and data security?
Well, I don't think, as far as the technology is concerned, there can be issues of data breach or data security will arise, because when we speak about the robust technology infrastructure, that infrastructure should be so solid that it can ensure that the data security is always maintained. As far as the data breach is concerned, like for example, most of the infrastructure today is technology enabled, whether it is banks or the financial institution. Even similar concerns were raised as far as the banks and financial institutions are concerned, which are much more critical in nature, which can have a financial impact. So I'm sure the solutions are available. And although there are fears that may be expressed, but I don't think that fears can prevent us from moving ahead, and we can always find solutions for such fears.
The other question that I see a lot of people seem to be asking is, what about regulatory work, which usually requires law firms to deploy advocates to be present at the time of execution of tasks?
Well, a simple thing, trademark registry, basically your patent registry is concerned. I believe even regulatory areas like TDSAT is concerned, NCLT is concerned. Those areas undoubtedly should be on the basis of virtual courtroom, and only if the matter has a voluminous record which requires a physical presence of the lawyer, so that he can point out certain if the courts have to see in his presence. Yes, in those cases you must have a physical hearing, but basic hearings are concerned, or most of the matters, if you look at the NCLT, whether it is like any petition that has been filed under the bankruptcy code for the financial creditor or operational creditors, I don't see any reason why you cannot argue on the basis of virtual courtroom. These are the classic cases where the technology has to be used, and we should have a virtual courtroom. As far as the regulatory practice is concerned, only 1% or 2% of matters requires physical presence of people. Regulatory practice has to be on the basis of digitization, digital practice, and any hearings are concerned either by use of teleconferences or by virtual courtroom. Those proceedings can easily be conducted.
Another question that I see that is coming up is that, what about the use of new age technologies like blockchain technology? Do you think that is something that we can use in the digitization of our court structure?
Yes, because when you express the fears like data breach, data security, or there is one comment that came about the deep fake videos and other aspects are concerned, blockchain does comes as a solution.
Another question that I see someone has posted, that how helpful can digitization be for matters related to constitutional law that are argued regularly in the High Court and the Apex Court of India?
Well, absolutely, because as far as the constitutional matters are concerned, you can file the papers basically in the digital form. A petition can be filed, a response can be filed in the digital form. It can expedite the hearing. You can expedite the response. Your summons can be served in a digital manner over an email. If you do not require to come and file it physically, then you can file a digital records. Now the digital signatures are made available. Basically, if we are able to develop a software or a module which is like ePod, like e-proof of delivery, digital signatures, you can file the applies on the basis of digital record. And basically, as far as the constitutional matters are concerned, one can easily sit in the office and place his submissions before the court. And if the courts have any query, like how we are discussing today or participating in this seminar, the courts are well equipped to ask the questions to different set of lawyers who are appearing in the constitutional matters.
So a person has written that a lot of people working in court may lose jobs due to digitization. So how do we tackle this challenge?
Earlier, the typewriters were there. From the typewriters, we computerization of the court. In fact, computerization of the courts did not take away the job. I'm sure similarly, the digital courts and the digitization of record will create more jobs. You will require people with different skill sets. So what is interesting is basically we need people with technology sound skill sets and people who have acquired new skill sets. So as far as the jobs are concerned, I think it will create, in fact, it will create more jobs. The disposal, which today, which is at bare minimum, disposal rate will become much better. And with the use of technology, of close to 50 to 80 matters in the course of the day.
Another question that seems to be coming in, sir, is that, but is there any country in the world that has fully implemented this technology in the court structures? And how can we learn from them in terms of their processes of e-filing and how to adjust to these digital processes easily?
Well, as far as e-filing is concerned, most of the advanced countries have taken a step ahead. Even in India, you are seeing, I think we are very much there in terms of e-filing. But I guess as far as the virtual courtrooms is concerned, it will require a change of mindset and attitude. It has started. But we can start in a phase-wise manner. The first phase can be the Supreme Court and the High Court. The second phase, along with the arbitration matters, we can introduce the virtual courtrooms. And as far as the lower judiciary is concerned, we can introduce e-courts on a phase-wise manner. When I say that paperless, peopleless court, it does not mean that there is going to be no courts which will require the presence of people. Yes, people will be required. Yes, there will be physical records, but those will be required in 10% of cases. 90% of matters can be decided in the virtual courtroom.
So one of our participants asked that should digitization be a top-down process? Is it easier to establish a workable structure for the Supreme Court, but the district courts, despite with younger judges, would struggle to catch up on account of financial constraints? So if you could just tell us that what is a better way to go about it? Should it be a top-down approach or down-to-up approach?
In my opening remarks, I had emphasized that we should provide the funds for digitization of the records. And according to me, you cannot say that it can be a top-down or a bottom-up approach. But as far as the entire infrastructure is concerned, for last 30 years, we are trying to achieve we were looking at computerization of record. From 2006-7 onwards, we saw the digitization of the records. So I guess we have spent sufficient time. There has been a lot of infrastructure that has been put into the place. And in my view, if a serious approach is made by all the stakeholders, then by 2022 or latest by 2024, we can achieve the digitization of the records in the entire judicial infrastructure, whether it is the lower courts or whether it is the Supreme Court.
Thank you so much, sir. That brings us to the end of our question and answer round. Since I see a lot of people have asked us about that whether law schools are integrating technology into their legal curriculums, I must tell you that sir is our esteemed advisor of Vijayabhumi School of Law. And actually in the curriculum that we are developing at the School of Law, we are integrating courses of artificial intelligence, data sciences, along with law and courses of management to make it a very relevant degree for the Industrial Revolution 4.0. As sir said, that we should consider ourselves a task force. And the end game of this entire session should be that we should put together a white paper that we can present to the authorities. Like I said, the objective of our entire session was, like we have discussed in sir's discourse and in the question and answer rounds that have followed, our idea was that we want to put together a paper that we will present to the authorities. So we actually have prepared a question for you. So we would request everybody who's interested to send us a response paper on the same. It can be anything. It can be just a paragraph or a page on how can we integrate digital technology into the existing court structures. So we want that as many people can think of innovative solutions and send it to us. I'll also give out the email address to you that we will be using for us to collate those responses. It's webinarvulaw@gmail.com. I will repeat that again, webinarvulaw@gmail.com. That is where we really hope most of you can send us some response papers. I'll repeat the question again. how do we integrate digital technology into the existing court structures? That is the question that we are looking at. So we'd really be grateful if in the next 2 or 3 days, if you could send us some response papers on the same, so that we can go through the solutions that have been offered by the participants and make them a part of our white paper. From Vijayabhumi School of Law and from Sir's side as well, I would like to take this opportunity of thanking each and every one of you for attending the session. I really hope that each one of you found it very, very fruitful. As a practicing lawyer from the legal fraternity, I definitely found it very useful, especially the insights that were shared by Sir. And I really hope to hear from a lot of you, and we hope to receive a lot of response papers from all of you. Thank you so much for your time, everyone. And please keep following our social media handles for being a part of our upcoming webinars. Thank you so much. So, any parting words you'd want to give us?
Thank you so much. Stay home and stay safe.
Yes, keep healthy and stay safe and stay indoors, please.